Namaskar. Today I will talk about election and more elections. Recently Karnataka state election was declared and the voting will be on 10th of May and the result will be out on 13th of May. Later this year, more states will go for election. For example, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana and Chhattisgarh. So we are always in the environment of election and more elections. Certain people say that regular elections symbolize too much democracy. Certain people say that more and more elections are very expensive affair. It increases the cost to the state. Certain people say that more and more election stop development work due to regular imposition of model code of conduct. So let us analyze whether more and more elections symbolize too much democracy, impede the flow of development work, or are costly to the state, or we require more elections for a vibrant democracy. The alternative can be one nation, one election. So let us analyze whether more elections are suitable for a more vibrant democracy or one nation, one election, also known as simultaneous elections, in which the election for the central government and the state governments are happening together once in 5 years will be more beneficial for a democracy. So let's start this video by analyzing certain examples. So India is the largest democracy in the world. Let us compare this with the second largest democracy in the world, that is United States. So let's take an example of USA. Now when I talk about US is always in the mode of elections. There are two major political parties, Republican and Democrat. Now there are various contenders within these two political parties to emerge as their official presidential nominee. So there are various internal election process happening in the United States in these two parties to emerge as what official presidential nominee for these parties. These are termed as primaries. So primaries are the first set of elections. They are to select the presidential nominee emerging from the parties. Now when the official presidential nominees are there, so there will be conduct of presidential elections. So last presidential election happened in November 2020. Now these elections happened along with US Congress elections or the House of Representatives or the Member of Parliaments. So when I talk about the November 2020 came President Joe Biden. So Joe Biden's tenure is for 4 years. The president tenure is for 4 years, but the US Congress members are re-elected every 2 years. Every 2 years. So president for 4 years, Congress members are re-elected every 2 years. That means after 2 years there will be midterm elections. So midterm elections happened in what? November 2022. Midterm elections. Why these are being termed as midterm elections? Because this is the midterm of this current president, that is after 2 years. This means the same process will be repeated after 2 years. November 2024 again the next presidential election and the US Congress elections, followed by again midterm elections in 2026. So what we are saying is US is always in election mode. They are not talking about one nation, one election, because more election means more vibrancy in the democracy. More issues are being raised, more questions are being asked, and more answers to be given. Hence, more elections always make the democracy more powerful. And when we compare this with one election in 5 years, it will become more silent. The democracy will lose its voice, its vibrancy. And a silent democracy is not a democracy at all. So let's talk about whether we had simultaneous elections in our country or not. Let's see the history now. So were there simultaneous elections in India? Yes, till 1967. Till 1967. So our first elections were conducted in the year 1951, 52, where the elections were conducted both for the union government as well as state governments. And that was the era of what? One dominant political party. So that dominant political party was emerging winner both at the union level and the state level. And it was forming the governments at all the levels, whether states or the center. So hence the tenure of this period of all the state governments and the union government expired simultaneously. Again the elections happened in 1957 to 62 period. The same continuity of simultaneous elections continued till 62. Again the state governments and the union government was formed by the same dominant political party, the Congress. Now again 1962 to 1967, again the condition remained the same. It began to change post 1967. So what happened after 1967? more regional parties emerged, more what state level parties emerged, and they started to challenge the dominant party. But as these were not powerful enough on their own to challenge the dominant political party, so they started to form the coalition governments to challenge the main dominant political party and to form government in the states. But this also was a period of what Ayaram Gayaram culture, when the MLAs were shifting the positions or hopping from one party to another because numerous lucrative offers were given to them, like ministerial berths or even the use of money. So hence, whatever the coalition governments emerging in the states, they were either not stable, so they were falling down. As they fell, there was a requirement of conducting the state elections in those states. Hence, gradually, the elections for the center and the states began to differ over a period of time. So what we found that simultaneous elections in India were happening till 1967 because there is a one dominant political party which was forming the government for the states at the center. So there was no planned way of conducting simultaneous elections. There was no planning. Okay, it was not according to the plan, and the elections begin to differ for the states and the union again on its own. Yes, again there was no planning. Now, if you are going to plan one nation, one election every 5 years for electing both the state and the central governments, so we have to consider various things, whether we are going to empower the voter, whether we are going to strengthen the democracy or not. Let's see some important points to ponder if we are moving towards simultaneous elections. But before that, let's see whether the more and more elections are very costly. Let's see the entire facts and figures linked with cost first. So will the simultaneous elections will reduce costs? So I'm showing certain data shared by the Election Commission itself. That is the official cost for conducting the general elections of 2014 and 2019. Here I am not talking about the expenses done by the political parties and candidates for their campaigning. Here I am talking about the official cost of the state for conducting the elections. So let's see the 2014 figures. So according to Election Commission, the cost incurred for conducting 2014 general election was rupees 3,870 crores. And what was the voter base in 2014? The voter base was 84 crores. So total cost 3,870 crores and the voter base 84 crores. So average cost per voter was only rupees 46 per voter. Now let's see the general elections of 2019. The cost increased to 5,420 crores. With the voter base, again the voter base also increased to 90 crore. And the average cost per voter was rupees 60 crore per voter. That means two major general elections 2014-19. If we combine these two costs, so it will be hovering around 9,300 crores. That is for those two general elections 14 and 19. Now within this 5-year period, there will also be certain state government elections. Now assuming that on an average 5 state government elections happening each year. That means within this 5-year period, around 25 states will be going for elections. So for 25 states conducting elections, the cost, if we assume, will not be more than 20,000 crore rupees. So that means within 5-year period, 25 state government elections and 2 general elections, the total cost will not be exceeding more than 30,000 crores. Will not be exceeding more than 30,000 crore. Is it a very huge cost for running the largest democracy in the world? We are the largest democracy in the world. From my perspective, this is not a very big cost. And I will be proving this by quoting certain example as a comparative what figure, so that you will finding these are just peanuts in comparison to that figure. Now you must heard a term called NPA, non-performing assets, leading to bad loans. Do you know what is the amount of bad loans that have been written off in our country in the last 5 financial years? I am going to share Ministry of Finance data. So according to Ministry of Finance, banks have written off bad loans worth more than 10 lakh crore rupees. 10 lakh crore rupees. During the last 5 financial years, 2017-18 to 2021-22. Now compare 10 lakh crores. That means where the bad loans have been written off, not a single recovery, or all the money have gone to drains, versus 30,000 crores for running the largest democracy in the world. When you compare this with these are just peanuts. So that means the elections is not here with respect to the issue of cost. We are not going to demand one nation, one election because the costs are very, very high, because more and more elections make the democracy more vibrant. So this is not the issue of cost at all. Let's talk about whether regular elections, more and more elections hamper the flow of development work or not. Let's talk about model code of conduct now. Model code of conduct. So when model code of conduct comes into picture, hardly 2 months before the elections. Now, for example, forthcoming Karnataka elections. The elections were declared on 29th March 2023 and the voting will be on what? 10th May and the results will be out on 13th May. That means before the voting, what's the time duration? Not more than 40 days. So normally 40 days, 45 days, 60 days, this is the time duration for model code of conduct. So maximum 2 months. So usually model code of conduct comes into force 2 months before the elections. So 2 months before the elections. That means all the political parties know this, whether the state governments or the central government level. So all the political parties know that there will be 2 months of model code of conduct. This means on an average, what is the time duration what all the political parties in power get to show development work, to show that they are working for the people, to show that they are concerned for the people? They are getting around 4 years, 10 months to show their performance. 2 months model code of conduct. That means all the state governments and the central government have got 4 years, 10 months to show that they are really concerned for the people and really bringing real development for the people. But what happened? They wait for the last moment to cut the ribbons, to inaugurate the unfinished projects, just to what? Influence the voters. So here again, this is not the issue what delay in development work, because 4 years, 10 months are more than enough to ultimately show your inclination for the people, government for the people. Now, these 2 months can be very proactively channelized also. Yes, the development work in a departments actually slows down or completely stop. So these 2 months can be the ideal period for the people sitting in those departments to reassess the projects and the schemes, okay, evaluate their performances and create assessment reports, a complete assessment reports to be shared with the new government taking oath after elections. So this 2-month period can be review period of all the schemes and programs, so that a proper review report can be handed over to the next coming government, so that the work is taken forward as fast as possible, as soon as possible. So here model code of conduct is appropriate time for review and assessment of projects and schemes. So what we have found out is, first of all, more and more elections are not a costly affair. More and more elections are not going to hamper the development work. But there can be other challenges if we are going to reduce the number of elections or move towards one nation, one election. The problems can be, now if we are moving towards one election in 5 years where the people are forced to vote only one time for the center and the state governments, what happens? National issues and the state issues are different. But when you are forcing the voter to vote at one time, both for the state and the center, you are reducing the discretion power of the voter. So what can happen? One national narrative or two national narrative can influence even the state elections, whether the national narratives are real in nature or may be created. But when the voters are given two different time or two different opportunities to vote, they may be voting differently. Because when they vote for state election, they may be thinking differently. When they're voting for the national elections, they may be thinking differently. And the best example is Government of Delhi. So first of all, national and state issues are different. And the best example to quote here is Government of Delhi. So general elections of 2014, now the Government of Delhi election 2015. General elections of 2019, Government of Delhi election 2020. That means Government of Delhi elections were happening within 1 year of general elections of 2014 and 2019. And the same voters in Delhi voted for an X party for member of parliament seat, and the same voters in Delhi voted for Y party for MLA seats. So this clearly shows when the people are voting on two different occasions, they may be thinking differently even if they are getting less than 1 year to vote. But when you're forcing the people to vote only at one go, it will be benefiting the topmost party or the richest party to influence the narrative and to get a double engine government. So hence, this may not be the right way of what promoting elections, because we have to support the power to the voters, we have to support the discretion of the voters. So at least two occasions are required. Next problem is, we know the MPs and MLAs after winning the elections, they are not visible. It's difficult to catch them. So they come with a tagline, catch me if you can. It's difficult to catch them. But at least when there are regular elections happening, center, state elections, at least the MPs, MLAs, ministers, they are at least campaigning. They are trying to link with the people, meet the people. People may surround them, may question them. At least they have an opportunity of surrounded by people or people surrounding them. But when we are conducting just one election in 5 years, that means they will not be visible at all. Even right to protest will not work. What we have seen 1 year of farmer protest, initially the government was not paying any heed, but when the 5 state elections came near and the most important was UP election, government came forward and withdraw the acts. Here I am not talking about whether the protests were right or wrong. Here I am not talking about whether the acts were right and wrong. Here I am talking about the importance of right to protest, because it worked. It forced the government to think. For example, if there are youngsters who are not getting employment, they are demanding and searching for work, recruitment processes are not coming, and they are now thinking of protesting peacefully. Peaceful protests will not work if they are one election in 5 years. As more elections happening regularly, at least the states have to announce vacancies, they announce what recruitment processes. So pressure is always there, because they know if they are not listening to the people, then definitely people are going to raise their protest or raise their voice. So hence, one nation, one election may silence the people and may be creating more aloof politicians who may not be thinking about the people altogether. So hence, the next issue is that I already explained. Elections once in 5 years will make parties and representatives more relaxed and distant from the electorates. Now next is, when we talk about a voter, when we talk about average voter. So will the voter feel more empowered by voting once in 5 years, or will the voter feel more empowered by voting at least twice in 5 years? At least twice in 5 years will be doubling the power of an average voter. Now, at least the second opportunity to vote, maybe the person is going to rectify the previous mistake, may choose a different party. That means 2 times voting in 5 years is going to empower the voter more, rather than one time opportunity of voting once in 5 years. So here again, so right of a voter to exercise her choice twice in a span of 5 years is more important, rather than just forcing the voter to vote only once in 5 years. Now there can be other possibilities. For example, if there is an unstable state government and it's about to fall, and finally it fell. So will that state will be waiting for the next one nation, one election to get the government again? This means it will be lapsing under president's rule. Hence, it will be undermining the autonomy of that state. So next problem is, which may emerge is, if an unstable state government falls, then will it have to wait for next full elections to get a government again? So again, this is going to be a very, very important question. Now let's talk about no confidence motion. It can also undermine the power of no confidence motion. For example, if an opposition party at the parliament level is deciding to move a no confidence motion against the ruling government, and there's a more chances of what NCM or no confidence motion being passed. So it will forcing what elections on all the state governments, including in those states in which that opposition party is in power. So opposition parties will be more than reluctant in pushing the no confidence motion, because they will be imposing elections on all the states, even those states in which they are in power. So there are various ifs and buts associated with what one nation, one elections. Now, who will be most happy? Who will be most happy with one nation, one election? Let's see. So who will be most happy? Definitely the richest party, the most powerful party, who can influence the voters by creating national narratives, who can buy the media houses, influence the voters in a particular manner, and finally maybe achieving double engine government. Or the corporates will be very, very happy because we know corporates fund elections, they fund political parties. Now when the elections once in 5 years, they will funding once in 5 years, so they will be most happy. But there is a caution here. We are already a democracy. We are already a economy. Yes, sorry, we are already an economy of 1% people. We are already an economy of 1% people. But we should not be becoming a democracy of only 1% people. Let a democracy be there in the hand of 100%. So from my perspective, more elections create more vibrant, more vocal, more demanding, more questioning democracy instead of one nation, one election, which weakens the democracy, because silence in democracy is not a sign of a successful democracy. Now we project ourselves as the largest democracy in the world. We have to compare with other democracies of the world, and the best comparison can be the second largest democracy. And there in US, nobody talks about one nation, one election. Actually, US is always in the election mode. Similarly, more elections in India will be making our elections more powerful, definitely voters more informed in times to come, democracy more strengthened. So we require more elections rather than one nation, one election. I hope you liked the video. Re-see the video again, share the video again, and subscribe the channel. I will keep on sharing more and more information on different topics. Thank you for seeing me. My name is Ritesh Kumar Singh, ex-civil servant. Thank you.